We are now joined by Karina Gould. Ms. Gould, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Listen, given the moment that we're in, I need to begin with the countervailing tariffs and the very fact that we're now in this trade war with the United States. I wonder, because we as a country are so dependent on the U.S. economically, are we shooting ourselves in the foot by not sticking to negotiation instead of trying to match the U.S. tariffs on some level?
No, my goodness. I mean, what is there to negotiate? We are not going to negotiate away our sovereignty or our economy. I mean, the only thing that a bully responds to is strength. I mean, you can give him your lunch money, but he's just going to keep shaking you down for more day after day. So we have to stand up firmly and strongly to Donald Trump. Our economy is not up for negotiation. Our jobs are not up for negotiation. Our sovereignty is not up for negotiation. So no, I think a strong, thoughtful, intelligent response is what's needed. And absolutely that starts with retaliatory tariffs.
Now, we heard it from the Prime Minister today, believing that this is part of a greater economic or a greater political strategy on Donald Trump's part to economically destabilize Canada to make annexation easier. Do you share that assessment?
Well, I don't know if it's about annexation to that extent, but I do think that he is after critical minerals, our natural resources, perhaps even our water. And I think the fact of the matter is like, again, none of this is up for negotiation with Donald Trump. We actually have a trade agreement already with the U.S. and Mexico and NAFTA 2.0 and CUSMA. So this is not on the table. And we know that Donald Trump likes to go for the maximum in order to get what he wants. But I think we just have to stay strong, stay united, and not break, because that's the only way that we are going to come out of this, as strongly as possible.
Now, you mentioned Mexico, and I was going to ask you a question about that because, yes, we are in a trade relationship with Mexico as well. You yourself worked with the Mexican Trade Mission in Canada for a time before entering politics. How do we find allyship with that country right now? Because they, too, are facing this punishing tariff, promising to introduce their own countervailing duties come Sunday.
Well, I think we need to be in constant dialogue with Mexico. I mean, what the United States is doing right now is so unbelievable, so ill-conceived, and so hurtful to the three economies, but particularly to the American economy, which is extremely reliant on both Canada and on Mexico. And we need to make sure that we have a united front here. NAFTA works. CUSMA works. This is something that has led to greater prosperity in our three countries, and we need to protect that and defend it. But we need to continue to build a strong relationship, not just with Mexico, but with other like-minded countries. Because if this is how Donald Trump treats his friends, imagine how he treats other countries that he's not as close with as Canada and with Mexico. I mean, it is absolutely astonishing, and it kind of boggles the mind that he would do this. And quite frankly, we're seeing how the U.S. market is reacting to this. I mean, it is having a huge impact on the U.S. economy already on day one. And I think that Canada's retaliatory tariffs are going to have another impact. And then we need to put everything on the table, because we have to ensure that this trade measure that he has put in place does not last long. And he needs to be accountable to the American people for the fact that he is now making food, housing, energy, literally everything in the United States more expensive because of this ill-conceived plan that he has.
Now, you are running to be the next Liberal leader, the next Prime Minister, if that should happen. Where would you look for allyship? You talk about other countries, but specifically, given the fact that Donald Trump has become this global disruptor in a very short amount of time, where would you be looking immediately for economic allyship, political, diplomatic, military partnership right now?
Yeah, so look, I think this is a tremendous opportunity for us as Canada to get closer to our NATO allies that are not the United States. I mean, look, what we saw on Monday with the United States deciding to no longer support Ukraine militarily, there is an imperative for us to work with our friends and allies in Western Europe I think there's also a space for us to get closer to democratic nations in Asia, in Latin America, and Africa, to really kind of build that democratic alliance around the world. We are seeing Donald Trump go closer to, people like Putin, who illegally invaded Ukraine and who we know is an authoritarian who does not believe in democracy, who does not believe in freedom, who does not believe in human rights or justice. And now is the time for Canada to live our values on the world stage and to shore up those partnerships and those alliances. I think we have to continue to have a dialogue with the U.S. But it's a very different world this week than it was even 5 days ago in terms of how quickly he is moving the United States away from a rules-based international order, one in which democracy, human rights, freedom, and justice are the values that we pursue.
Mm-hmm. Now, the government is promising to support Canadians through difficult economic times because that's what a trade war creates for Americans, also for Canadians, though. What would you be prioritizing when it comes to that file? Obviously, you're no longer in cabinet, but as potentially the next prime minister, what would you prioritize?
Well, so there are three things. First is making sure that we have a very strong, robust response to the United States that demonstrates our strength, our unity, and our willingness not to back down, because I think that's the only thing that's going to get Donald Trump to change course and to exit this terrible strategy that he's put in place right now. Second is to quickly stand up income supports for Canadians who have lost their jobs as a result of these predatory tariffs from the United States. And third, to establish a support system for businesses and industries that are also impacted, because I have faith that Canada will come out victorious in this trade dispute. But we need to make sure that we have the good jobs for Canadians to return to when that does happen. So for me, it's really about putting the resources of the federal government to work to ensure that we are supporting Canadians and our industries through these tough times. And maybe one final point there, Michael, is that now is not the time for cuts. When I hear, colleagues or Pierre Poilievre talking about, cuts to federal programs or the federal public service, now is not the time to be having that conversation when we need every federal public servant focused on getting Canada through what is, a major attack to our economy and to our people, and to ensure that we have the resources and the supports needed to help Canadians, get through these tough times if they lose their jobs, and get our businesses and our industries weathering the storm so that we can get people back into those jobs when we eventually win this trade dispute.
Mm-hmm. Listen, let's turn now specifically to the Liberal leadership race, because Mark Carney, continually described as the perceived front runner in this. He has the largest number of cabinet ministers supporting him. Polls for your party seem to get a bump when they mention his name. So what do you see your path to victory now as being? How do you actually get there?
Yeah, so again, it's great that my colleagues have made their endorsements. That's fine, but there are 400,000 Liberal members, and it's one member, one vote. So each Liberal member has just as much weight as a cabinet minister. And I have been so encouraged by the response that I'm getting from across the country, who, particularly after the English and French language debates last week, where I heard from Canadians that they felt I'm the person who is debate ready to take on the opposition in both official languages, who lives and breathes Liberal values, who's not afraid to stand up for the things that I and millions of Canadians care about. And so I'm just so encouraged by the response that I'm getting across the country.
So you still think you have a chance here?
Absolutely. So, you have covered many elections, Michael, and you know that, elections matter, debates matter. Every day is important in politics, and I'm just so motivated and so encouraged by the support that I'm getting.
Okay, listen, quickly running out of time, but I have to ask you, because you mentioned the leadership debate, and of the four that were on that stage, you seem to be the most comfortable with defending the current Prime Minister's record, given where your party was just 2 months ago. Is that a smart strategy?
I'm proud of being a Liberal, and I'm proud of the things that we have done as Liberals. Like, did we get things wrong? Absolutely. And I can point to the fact that particularly following the pandemic, when inflation was going out of control, our government did not respond adequately or quickly enough to the cost of living crisis that Canadians were facing. But I'm not going to run away from the fight against climate change. I'm not going to run away against supports to families like the Canada Child Benefit or early learning and childcare. Those are really good programs that we put in place that made a meaningful difference in people's lives. And we're not going to win the next election by being conservative light. We're going to win by being liberals. And so I, am someone who joined the party when I was 14. I've been there in good times and I've been there in tough times. And I am proudly carrying the Liberal banner moving forward through this leadership race and into the next election.
Karina Gould, thank you for this. Really appreciate the time.
Thanks, Michael.